I'm John Ross. Birds that hunt from the skies are some of nature's most highly skilled creatures. First, they need senses acute enough to pinpoint tiny prey in the distance. Then they need the coordination to carry out the very difficult task of flying and diving on their quarry, often while it too is moving. There are 60 species of raptors in India, as well as many other birds that hunt from above, and each has evolved its own specialized methods and adaptations to be successful.
Sharp eyesight, aerodynamic design, and a lethal arsenal of weapons are characteristics that set predatory birds apart from other species. These airborne hunters play an important part in the ecosystem, helping to regulate their prey populations. Also, as scavengers, many play a major role in maintaining a healthy habitat for the survival of all species.
Join me as I explore the world of India's hunters of the sky.
A predatory bird's anatomy is a study in specialized features. The skeletal structure is an ideal compromise, strong enough to support powerful flight, but light enough for the bird to get off the ground. Like all birds, a raptor's bones are hollow, but internal support struts help to add strength. These struts are crucial because the legs and claws of raptors must be much more powerful than other birds. The talons are the grasping and killing tools that raptors rely on most. However, in some birds of prey, the beak is used to deliver the final blow. Falcons and kites, in particular, are known to kill in this manner. In the beak, a mandibular notch severs the spinal cord of the quarry. The beak is made up of a bony core surrounded by a layer of keratin, the same material found in human fingernails. And just like fingernails, the keratin layer continues to grow throughout the raptor's life, being worn down through use. In all raptors, the beak is used primarily for feeding. Its sharp hooked shape is ideal for cutting and ripping prey apart. Perhaps the raptor's most remarkable feature of all is its eyesight. The bird's binocular vision can rapidly focus, distinguish detail from a great distance, and with a capacity for seeing ultraviolet light, raptors have a much richer and more detailed view of the world than humans. The eyes of the spotted owlet are particularly well adapted to seeing at night, although they work just as well in the cooling hours of dusk. To keep its feathers in peak condition, a raptor must preen throughout its active hours. Pulling and straightening smooths and realigns the feather structure. It also helps to remove tiny parasites such as feather lice or flies. Mutual preening also helps to reinforce the bonds between a mated pair. The mother owlet returns to her nest, and she watches for her mate to follow. But the male owlet is distracted by movement below. The male owlet returns to the nest with his prize in his beak. Descending into the tree hollow, he immediately turns the mouse over to one of his chicks. There are 4 young owlets confined in the small space. Both the mother and the father share the duties of feeding and caring for the offspring. It is rare for owls and owlets to have such a large clutch all survive to this age. The mother and father depart almost immediately. The cramped conditions are such that they spend very little time with their young. But even if their quarters were more spacious, they would still have to spend most of their waking hours hunting. Later that evening, the last and smallest of the chicks finally feeds. Its mother has brought a lizard, which it hungrily devours, while the rest of the brood sits huddled at the entrance to the nest. One by one, the parents depart to continue the search for food. It won't be long now before the chicks follow their lead. Two weeks later, all 4 chicks have left the nest for good. But although they're almost fully developed and have the talents to do the job, they haven't learned to hunt for themselves yet. Their days and nights are spent in the vicinity of their nest, where they continue to be fed by their parents. They also must be on guard for the challenges the outside world presents. A common occurrence for an owl is being mobbed by other birds. One of the chicks is getting its first taste of this nuisance. A noisy group of babblers descends, and one strikes the owlet on the head. Suddenly, the babblers are gone. A noisy chatter reveals the presence of an even more menacing bird, the Indian house crow. The chick is uncertain of what to do, as the intruder begins its relentless harassment. Eventually, the owlet will find the only recourse is to either fly away or patiently wait out the attacker. Mobbing by other birds is something that owlets and most owl species will experience nearly every day of their lives. Two of the chicks return to the safety of the nest. As does a third. But the 4th chick patiently waits for the crow to move on, and then spots movement on the forest floor. This chick has made its first kill. It's a good indication that it will succeed as an adult and go on to breed offspring of its own. The Indian white-backed vulture takes to the air a few hours after dawn. The rising temperatures provide thermal currents which lift the birds as high as 9,000 feet. The white-backed vulture is classified as an Old World vulture. These birds use only their sharp eyesight to find food. Most of the day is spent in flight, searching for carrion. Sometimes the bird spots a carcass, but most often it follows the descent of other vultures. So when one lands to drink, others follow in search of food. When all they find is water, they usually quench their thirst. These large gatherings inevitably bring social hierarchy into view. In vulture groups, dominance is typically exerted by the larger birds, both within a species group and between different kinds of scavengers. But once a vulture's thirst is satisfied, it's less apt to stand its ground when an aggressive and thirsty newcomer challenges. This characteristic of deferring to subordinates allows vultures to congregate in relative harmony around water or carcass, or when simply sunning themselves and displaying their nearly 8-foot wingspan. July is the onset of the monsoon season in central India. High in her nest, a mother vulture feeds regurgitated food to her single surviving chick. Like most species, vulture births peak when the food is most available. Most of the animals that become the carrion vultures eat are born at this time of year, when the rains of the monsoon bring an abundance of grass and plants for the grazers and browsers to eat. In less than 3 months, the chick has increased its weight 30 times and is nearly ready for its first flight. The father is perched nearby and returns to the nest after the rains. Upon landing, he begins to nibble and tug at the chick. This is a behavior that's often performed by adults, especially mated pairs. In fact, the mother soon joins in, pecking at the father. The male flies off to resume the daily search for food. In a few days, the chick will begin flying, only between trees and returning to the nest at first. In a few weeks, it will leave the nest forever. Generally, adult vultures are gregarious and will roost at night in colonies of a dozen or more birds, especially when there is a carcass nearby. The red-headed vulture is also known as the Indian king or black vulture. It's a striking specimen that is increasingly becoming less common in the wild. There are 6 species of vultures in India. These scavengers provide an invaluable service in nature, converting dead animals into energy for their use and ridding the habitat of waste. Most raptors will take advantage of fresh carrion when they find it. But vultures have a much greater tolerance for the pathogens that inhabit a rotting carcass. They commonly eat several-day-old rotting flesh, and in doing so eliminate many disease-carrying elements from the ecosystem.